everybody, welcome to Late Night Movie Talk. It's Jake, and tonight we're going to talk about Thunderbolts. Movie stars Florence Pugh as Yelena. You got Sebastian Stan back as Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. David Harbour as the Red Guardian. You also got other side characters like wannabe Captain America. You got, I think her name's Ghost. You have Taskmaster, and then you got Valentina, who is playing she's basically like the Nick Fury to the Thunderbolts, and where she's like pulling the strings and kind of in charge of the group in a way. Yelena gets put on this mission to take out this target, and she gets to this location, and there's the Captain America, fake Captain America. I can never remember that dude's name. You got Taskmaster, you got, I think, Ghost, and this new guy named Bob, who ends up being the Void. And basically, Valentina's goal is to have them all turn on each other and kill each other. She, assigned each one to kill another one to basically get rid of any evidence for this one program that she was running in order to cover up her political mess that she's currently in. And then Bucky Barnes and Red Guardian coming into the mix, and that's how you get the Thunderbolts. So they're all going after Valentina to take her down, and she ends up using Bob, or the Void, to kind of try to take out the Thunderbolts and to get rid of them and this program and the evidence once and for all. And they have to fight against him and overcome their own inner demons, because he can kind of trap you in like the deepest part of your mind and your memories. So they have to overcome that in order to kind of save the day. I guess timeline wise, I guess this happens like directly after Captain America Brave New World, and so you'll see some things that kind of play in to this movie from Captain America 4, and you'll also have needed to watch pretty much Captain America, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Ant-Man, what else? Black Widow, Hawkeye maybe. So definitely needed some homework in order to watch this, which is which is kind of getting annoying, because if you haven't watched 40 different movies, / series, then you might be lost. Now, what works for the movie is the actors for the most part. I think Florence Pugh is very good. She's really good as Yelena. She's a really good Black Widow. Bucky Barnes, obviously everybody loves Sebastian Stan as Winter Soldier. Red Guardian is good, but in small doses. And that's not David Harbour's fault. It's the writer's fault, because they're using him as the comedy relief. And I'll get to that in a second. And as much as I don't really like fake Captain America, White does a good job, and he does a much better job in this, because his character does get a little more fleshed out in this movie as opposed to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Ghost, Taskmaster, they kind of get glossed over again. They kind of clearly aren't that important to the story. And Dreyfuss plays Valentina pretty well. I mean, she does a despicable villain that nobody really likes, this backstabbing, two-faced politician who is manipulating everybody to do what she wants. She plays that pretty well, so I'll give that to her. Some of the action is well done. There's a chase scene towards the beginning of the movie after they're escaping this compound, and Bucky comes in on his motorcycle, and you've seen some of it in the trailer. That's well done. It's probably one of the better parts of the movie. And like I said, some of the action is pretty good. It's pretty typical of your Marvel, of your MCU, movies anyway. Another thing that I like about the movie is that they went with a little bit more mature story or themes, focusing on depression, dealing with past demons, overcoming their mistakes or things that are kind of haunting them, and it's what made them who they are. But they are dealing with things that are terrible. They were crimes. They hurt a lot of people, and this is a group that wants to be a hero. They want to be heroes. They want to do good things, but they also don't feel like they're worthy of being those heroes. And so that's another thing that they're kind of dealing with. And now, what really didn't work for me in the movie would be, I would say, first and foremost, is the comedy. And that's been an issue in the MCU for quite a while. They tend to undercut serious moments with, witty one-liners that aren't really that funny, that end up extending the scene and kind of ruining a serious moment. They tend to try to lighten the mood all the time instead of letting those more darker tones kind of play out a little bit more. And you'll particularly see this with the Red Guardian. David Harbour is funny. His character is funny. The Red Guardian, I like him. He is constantly saying stupid ass jokes all the time, and it's more than once has ruined a moment. Yelena has a couple. They all have some moments, and that's just an issue with the MCU in general that I have, and this movie's no different. It just tries to play everything up for laughs when not everything needs to be, especially when you're exploring, a darker theme in the movie. You should allow those scenes to kind of breathe and, be more authentic instead of constantly cracking jokes. Some people might like it. It's just not something that I think particularly works all the time. I would cut that down. My other issue is the movie is a little too long. I would probably cut around, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes out of it. Just because there's one character in particular that is completely wasted. Not sure why that person is even in this movie. They're in it for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. Just completely cut that character out. If you're not going to use them, why are they here? It felt like an obligation. So just get rid of that character. All in all, it was kind of annoying to see that character and that they could be a badass, but they played, I think, next to no role. I think if you were to remove that character, that movie doesn't change at all. Pointless. And another thing is the story felt a little too predictable at points. You saw where they were going with certain characters, with the villain or with Valentina or with Bucky, and you could pretty much guess where they were going. That's not necessarily a horrible thing. It was like, okay, if I can predict how the story's going to the very end, that's a bit of a writing problem for me. And lastly, you have the villain. You have the Void, who is pretty strong, pretty powerful. He's got all these powers, and he's seemingly unbeatable. And so he feels out of the Thunderbolts league, even though you got like 3 superhumans in this group. They don't have like superpowers as far as like magic goes and stuff like that. So it was like it didn't feel like they even stood a chance. So again, going with that predictability, they had to go that other route. And I won't spoil anything, but they have to appeal to his humanity. They couldn't fight this dude, head on because he's whooping their ass, because he's like this almost otherworldly being now. And he's got, like I said, he's got all these powers that they can't match. They're basically just strong, whereas this dude is like magic, basically. It felt more like an Avengers problem, like somebody like, I don't know, Wanda or Thor. That felt like more on par with those characters. But overall, I'd say there's more positives than negatives. Just the negatives kind of stand out because tonally they kind of just don't really make sense with the story that they got going on here. And so, it's not a bad time at the theater. A lot of people are going to probably wait for it to come to Disney Plus, maybe see it at like a matinee price. But of course, stick around for the after credits. You have a mid-credit scene and then you have an after credit scene. I was kind of looking forward to Thunderbolts kind of being less connected to the overall MCU story. I would just like to see a little bit more, from the MCU that's not necessarily like dependent on other properties. It'd be nice if they could stand on their own. It's one of the better MCU movies, but I wouldn't call it, It's definitely not the best since Endgame, like I'm seeing a lot of people say. I don't care what anybody says, but that's not really saying much since most of those movies are dog shit. So take that how you will. But by now it's been out for a few weeks. Have you seen the movie? What'd you think about it? Comment below, let me know. Like, subscribe, share, all that mumbo jumbo, and we'll see you in the next video. All right, take care.